Hello dear viewers of my channel, here is a new part of the favorite manhwa. It turned out very interesting, so I recommend you to watch until the end, as well as at the end of the video a little talk about the release of new parts, so I recommend you to watch. I want to thank all of you for your support, it's really nice to me. Thanks to you I continue to publish videos, although not so often. Anyway, I wish you a pleasant viewing. The storm was raging outside, while Lloyd's pet was incredibly angry. He was shaking and seemed to be trying to do something, but he couldn't. And Xavier said that it was impossible to create something in this weather. While Xavier looked the other way and seemed to sense something, he felt that since the time freeze the main character's mana had become unstable and he was probably in a bad state. Xavier thought that he would have loved to go straight to Lloyd, but a little while earlier he had heard the voice of the Queen, who did not understand what this strange dome was and why she could not get out of it. Xavier reported to the Queen that the time outside the dome was now stopped, and she instantly assumed it was Lloyd's doing, and Xavier confirmed this information. She immediately asked how to get out of the place, and Xavier told her that it was impossible, because the time freeze would not be lifted for a year. Xavier said that time would not change outside and it could be a short vacation for the Queen. She began to complain that Lloyd was now going to be Demon King, while the demons working in the background looked at the human Queen, and she immediately turned around, not understanding what was going on. Xavier asked if she wanted to know how this could have happened, but she wanted to ask Lloyd directly and asked where he was. He told her that Lloyd was on the mountain, while the Queen was worried that the snowfall was getting worse and decided to go to Lloyd personally. Xavier sensed that the Queen was looking for Lloyd, which brought a smile to his face, and he decided not to disturb the Queen. Lloyd suddenly opened his eyes and didn't understand what was happening. He was lying on a warm hide covered with a blanket. He looked around and realized he was in a cave. Lloyd didn't understand what kind of clothes he was wearing. They didn't have any. Lloyd turned to Xavier but saw the Queen, who was half naked and shivering from the cold. She had given all her warm clothes to Lloyd. The Queen lay sleeping and seemed to be trying to ignore the cold she felt. Lloyd didn't understand what was happening and just kept looking in the direction of the girl. A heavy snowstorm continued outside, while Lloyd carefully tried to cover the Queen with a blanket so as not to wake her up. Lloyd immediately began to run away, because he did not want to become the Queen's debtor, because then he would have to work again. Suddenly, while running, his heart began to ache again, and then he fell to his knees, feeling a terrible pain and coldness inside his body. The Queen's voice was heard and she assumed that Lloyd's condition was getting worse. She asked the guy to come closer to her. Lloyd instantly fell on his knees in greeting to the Queen, and she asked him to stop this farce and just come closer to her. The lad slowly began to approach without raising his head, whereupon she ordered him to do it faster and Lloyd sped up. The girl changed her pose and then pointed her hand to her knees and ordered Lloyd to lie down on them. Lloyd started to look at the girl without understanding anything and then just lay down on the ground, and she wondered if he was mocking her, while the guy just obeyed the order to lie down. The Queen started pointing to her leg again, telling the guy to put his head there. Lloyd didn't realize what was happening now, and a moment later he just broke down. It seemed like all reason in his head had collapsed. The Queen got angry and grabbed Lloyd's head, paralleling her screaming, then forcefully placed Lloyd on her lap. She started touching the guy in the area of his heart, after which the Queen's mana began to penetrate the main character's body. He was surprised that the Queen could do such a thing with her mana. The Queen confessed that she had learned this technique by watching Lloyd and Xavier, while Lloyd marveled at the girl's talent, because she had learned this technique alone. The Queen's mana enveloped the heart of the protagonist, and she asked how he was feeling, to which Lloyd replied that he was feeling a little better. The Queen was happy that the guy was feeling better and she started to smile. Suddenly Lloyd started to get embarrassed looking straight into the eyes of such a nice girl. He instantly started to run away from her lap out of embarrassment, while the Queen again grabbed the guy's head and put him on her lap and ordered him to lie still. She began to talk about the need to rest once in a while Lloyd was embarrassed to think that he was simply uncomfortable. Lloyd asked how the Queen had come to be in this place, and she confessed that she just wanted to see the protagonist. Lloyd started talking about how he always does the errands he's given, saying that even a snowfall wouldn't hurt him. The Queen directly asked if the guy really doesn't understand, or if he's just pretending, and Lloyd seemed to break down again, because this is the first time he's had something like this in his life, and he just doesn't know what to do. She began to say that the guy is smart, but the direct offer of marriage from a girl does not take seriously. Lloyd did not understand what was happening now. His head could not work properly. Suddenly in his head there was an image of how the queen offered Lloyd to marry. Then the guy's face turned completely red, his eyes began to twitch because he thought that the queen just wanted to load him with work, but it was not so. Suddenly the cave they were in began to shake. The queen assumed it was an earthquake. The protagonist began to realize that all the factors that were happening were proving that right now someone was trying to stop them. Lloyd started to get angry, saying that someone was trying to stop him. But the queen was not surprised by the guy's ingenuity. She thought he was a real genius. Lloyd made a mad face, then promised to make all those involved pay. The queen turned away when she saw his face, thinking that Lloyd's face really should have been changed. Outside, the snow continued to fall with great force, while something began to form in the air. A huge amount of wind began to form a cone from which a strange old man appeared. His name was Frontera, and he was the king of the spirits of the mountain range. He thought about the fact that in order to protect this place he had created conditions under which people could not survive in this place. He thought about how when the demons came to this land in ancient times, the spirit didn't care much. He told how their dragon guardian created a separate space where they all lived together. But the spirit's face changed as he remembered what happened then. He remembered the main character and Xavier, who in his memories looked like real villains. He thought about how these men had taken the demons and later brought more men. Lloyd had ordered Xavier to fix a precipitous piece of land, and then Xavier had attacked the place his master had mentioned with all his might, causing an incredibly powerful explosion, and the Spirit King remembered the two demons smiling at the flames they had caused. The spirit thought these people were truly insane and was incredibly angry. He thought about how people were cutting down trees without the slightest compassion. He thought that all these creatures were cursed demons who wanted to destroy the spirit's home. He watched the queen go after Lloyd, while thinking that he was going to banish these cursed creatures from his home. The spirit instantly intensified the ice storm. This instantly caused the work to stop, for the blizzard was no joke. The spirit began to shout that it was useless, because with such weak bodies, humans would not be able to withstand such cold. While the humans felt fine even in such harsh weather conditions. The Spirit King was incredibly angry, because not only had they survived the storm, they were also happy. Orcs were happy that they had a training in particularly harsh conditions. It turned out that the demons had a resistance to cold, because all who did not have it long ago died out. The spirit did not understand how weak people are able to possess such powerful mana. The spirit watched the people and realized that it would be impossible to get rid of all the people at once. For this reason the spirit decided to simply destroy the leader of the people, namely Lloyd. The spirit went to the cave where the protagonist was supposedly located. Then with all his might he began to shout. The ground began to shake. The protagonist began to come out of the cave. He was incredibly angry, while the queen showed no emotion on her face. The spirit hated Lloyd and was going to cut him with his wind blade. A terrible wind fell on the protagonist. Then he and the queen decided that their opponent was definitely not a mage and not a dragon. The queen started talking about how only one creature can do that, and Lloyd smiled instantly and made a crazy face thinking that their enemy was just a spirit. The spirit was surprised that Lloyd had figured it out so quickly, but he was sure that the guy couldn't do anything to him. It turned out that no power could harm the spirit, as suddenly Lloyd began his demonic chanting, which could not even be described in words. The queen instantly fell to the ground, and the spirit began to writhing in pain in the sky. The queen seemed to be injured. She definitely lost her battle spirit. While the spirit became visible, the queen looked in its direction, still shaking from the protagonist's voice, and the spirit just fell to the ground, unable to do anything after such a powerful mental attack. Lloyd asked if the spirit was the one who was interfering with his work in this place. The spirit didn't understand what kind of magic Lloyd had just used, because spirits are mana itself and nothing should harm it. The protagonist began to say that he had just spoiled the spirit's mood. Lloyd asked why the spirit was interfering with his work, what his problem was, while the spirit was amazed that the man didn't understand. The spirit started yelling about how humans were just destroying nature and that he would not let them destroy the mountain range. Lloyd instantly attacked the crazy spirit with his shovel, and then the spirit just started flying away laughing at the protagonist. He started saying that Lloyd was not strong enough to hurt him. Suddenly Lloyd started to get a full lungful of air, which caused the spirit to panic, because he already realized what was about to happen. The queen instantly stopped the protagonist. The queen started yelling that Lloyd should think of others when he was using that infernal chant from the underworld itself. Lloyd looked at the queen and tears started to form in his eyes. The queen felt bad for hitting him and wanted to apologize, while the spirit started shouting that the jokes were over and was preparing to attack. The mountain started to emit a huge amount of energy, and then all this energy started to move towards the spirit, who started shouting that he was the mountains and the mountains were him. While Lloyd and the queen were just listening to this nonsense, the spirit king appeared in front of them in a completely different form, saying that he had to kill these people. The spirit looked at the men, saying that now their lives would come to an end. While Lloyd said that the spirit was in trouble, the spirit didn't understand what the man meant. While Lloyd mockingly confessed that anyone who threatens him faces a worse threat, the spirit didn't know what the man was talking about. While behind him something was approaching at breakneck speed, it turned out to be Xavier, who was ready to strike incredibly hard. Then, a moment later, the spirit received a very strong attack right on his face. Lloyd started laughing out loud at the spirit. Then Lloyd started screaming about how nature had just as easily bowed down to the man. Lloyd continued to laugh insanely while the queen looked in his direction. She didn't understand how she could get out such a crazy man, assuming she had just lost her mind. Thank you all so much for watching this video to the end. If you like the new series, then put a like and write something in the comments. In a few days I will release the last part of this month, and we'll wait until the new chapters will be released. As soon as enough chapters will be released, I will write in the community YouTube about it so that you know when to wait for the video. Thanks again for your support. See you all soon.